God is not ignoring your prayers. He is answering them, just not in the language you were taught to expect. Most people don't stop praying because they lost faith in God. They stopped because they lost faith in the silence. You prayed for the healing. You begged for the direction. You cried out for the breakthrough. Days passed, weeks passed, maybe even years, and somewhere in all that quiet, a question started forming, not just in your mind, but deep in your chest. Is anyone even listening? If you felt that, you are not weak. You are actually in some of the best biblical company that has ever existed. Today we're going to look at what is really happening inside that silence, because what looks like God being absent is often God being the most present He has ever been in your life. When prayers go unanswered, most of us land in one of three places. God isn't listening, God doesn't care, or God said no. But what if none of those are accurate? The Bible doesn't just mention people who waited on God. It is practically built around them. Abraham waited decades for God's promise. Joseph waited years in a prison cell. David was anointed king, then spent years running for his life. Even Jesus, in the Garden of Gethsemane, prayed and received a different answer than he asked for, and not one of them was abandoned. Not one. That should stop you right there. The real problem is this: we judge God's activity by what we can see, and God is almost always working in places we cannot. One of the hardest answers God gives is not no, it's not yet. We live in an instant world, instant messages, instant delivery, instant everything. But God has never been in a hurry, because God's primary goal isn't your comfort, it's your transformation. Think about Joseph. God gave him a dream, then everything fell apart, betrayed by family, sold into slavery, thrown into prison. Year after year, it looked like God had completely forgotten him, and this is exactly where most people would have stopped praying altogether. But God wasn't ignoring Joseph. God was preparing Joseph. The waiting season wasn't punishment, it was construction. Sometimes the answer is delayed not because God forgot, but because you are not yet the person who can carry what you're asking for. But here's what most Christians never want to hear, and almost nobody says out loud. Sometimes our prayers go unanswered because our hearts need adjustment before our circumstances do. James 4:3 says it plainly. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions. That's not a harsh verse, that's a merciful one. God isn't a vending machine. Prayer isn't about convincing God to approve our plans. Prayer is about aligning our will with His. Sometimes we ask for things that would genuinely hurt us right now. Sometimes we ask for shortcuts through processes God designed to shape us. Sometimes we beg God to remove a struggle He's using as the very tool that's building us. And because He loves us too much, He doesn't give us what we want. Just like a parent who loves their child doesn't give them everything they demand. The Bible also speaks about spiritual obstacles that affect our fellowship with God. Unforgiveness, pride, hidden sin, a hardened heart. These things don't make God stop loving us, but they can create distance in the relationship. Here's a simple picture. If someone keeps walking away from you while asking for directions, the problem isn't your voice, it's their direction. God often wants to deal with who we are before He changes what surrounds us. Because the greatest miracle isn't always the changed situation. Sometimes the greatest miracle is the changed person, and a changed person in a difficult situation is far more powerful than an unchanged person in a comfortable one. Here is something that will completely change how you pray from this point forward. You have been measuring God's answer by whether your situation changed, but God has never measured His answer that way. He measures it by whether you changed. Read that again. You have been asking, why hasn't my situation moved? God has been asking, why hasn't your heart moved? That is not God being cruel. That is God being surgical, because He is not building a comfortable life for you. He is building an unshakable one. And unshakable things are never built in comfortable seasons. Every prayer you have prayed in the silence, God heard it. Every tear you cried in the waiting, God kept it. And every day you chose to trust Him anyway, heaven marked it. Nothing was wasted, not one moment. So why do prayers sometimes seem unanswered? Sometimes the answer is, wait. Sometimes it's, grow. Sometimes it's, trust me with what you cannot see yet. And sometimes, God is answering in real time, in ways that are just beyond your current field of vision. But this is always certain. God's silence is not His absence. His delay is not His rejection. His different answer is not proof that He doesn't love you. If you are in a season where heaven feels quiet, don't stop praying. Don't stop seeking. Don't let the silence convince you of something that isn't true. Maybe the silence isn't the problem. Maybe the silence is the answer, and you've been so afraid of it, you never stopped long enough to hear what it was saying. God is not asking you to understand the waiting. He is asking you to trust the one who has never once stopped working inside it. If this found you at exactly the right moment, drop a comment and tell us, what are you still trusting God with in the silence? Subscribe to Gospel Fix X for more Bible answers to the questions most people are afraid to ask. God is still working, even now, even here, even in this.